Welcome back. This is John Locke, and today I want to make this video specifically for people in the WordPress community and specifically WordPress developers. And before I get into the heart of what I want to talk about today, do me a favor and go ahead and give this a thumb up because it will help the YouTube algorithm surface this video. Now, the bulk of what I want to talk about is why WordPress development is undervalued in the market, both by clients and agencies when that is your main selling point. And I had been meaning to make a video about this, talking about how we present ourselves makes a difference in how we're perceived. But I was reminded of this. I've seen a thread with different people. My friend Daniel and my friend Andy were talking about this on Twitter a few days ago. And specifically, Daniel said, can we start talking about the low pay that is being offered for WordPress web developer jobs compared to other web dev design roles? I'm seeing so many for agencies of companies where a WordPress dev is literally making 60 grand. That seems undervalued by about 20 to 40K. Now, I can tell you that when the first maybe year and a half that I was working freelance in 2012 and 2013, I was trying to actively trying to get a full-time job working with an agency, but I just ultimately said, you know what, I'm not going to worry about that, and I'm just going to stay as a solo developer. And I did that for a while. I ended up subcontracting to other agencies remotely, but the local agencies around here really didn't want to pay anybody even 50 grand. I think they were more thinking 40 grand. And I had people tell me that too, 50 grand a year is too much. Now, I saw what their developers were going through, and I can tell you that they were overworked. But a lot of time, what people were doing back in 2012, 2013, all the way, in my experience, up until about 2017, is a lot of these places were buying a ThemeForest theme and saying, oh, we're 80% of the way there. And anybody who's worked with ThemeForest themes knows that that's not always the case. It's not just a case of we're going to find something on Envato and then slap some content in there, and it'll be much easier for you because things always change. And it's much easier if you know how to code to do this. Now, what Daniela was saying on Twitter, I thought was really interesting because WordPress development is very undervalued, and it's only grown in its complexity since then. But at that time, even you needed to know PHP, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, MySQL, as well as working with servers or configuring a lot of different things. And that's not even if you need to write custom functions to make everything work. One local client that I had for a while, for a short while, they did business software integrations. And one of the clients that they had was IBM. And one of the consultants that was on this conference call, we were all on a big conference call, this kind of explained to me the perception of WordPress. Now, mind you, I told you all the things that we need to know how to do, and that's quite a bit. And it's, like I said, it's grown since then. But this person was just being a condescending jerk and said, oh, you're the WordPress guy. Oh, isn't that where you just push a button and make stuff come out? I don't know that the perception of WordPress as a whole has changed since then, and this is why agencies undervalue it, and clients can if that is what you lead with. And I think a lot of the time we shoot ourselves in the foot by talking about things like page builders or it's so easy, and a lot of the time, because page builders have kind of replaced those ThemeForest themes for a lot of people. Or now, you have the block system, and there's some block frameworks that are kind of replacing that. But when you lead with things like, oh, I build this out in Elementor or Beaver Builder or whatever it is, cadence blocks or whatever. You're burying the value. You are burying the value of what you do, and you're focusing on the technology. Now, at one point, when I was focusing on that here in Sacramento, I made it a point to try and rank for WordPress development, WordPress web design, and I actually did rank #1 for that for about 3 years running. And there was a point where I made a conscious decision to not focus on that anymore. Like I said, at the time, basically it was a mix of clients that I would get from people finding my site, some of them local, a lot of them local. And then about the other half was remote agencies where there would be a team of either 1 or 2 people, where there was a designer or a designer and a developer or a designer and a business person or something like that. And they would basically come up with designs, and then they would have me build the site, develop the whole site. Now, some of the people would use ThemeForest themes as a starting point, as I mentioned before. But the last place that I worked with, they were actually pretty busy, but they pretty much insisted, like, you got to build this from, we don't want anything that's like a theme. We don't want anything that's page builder. This is part of our selling thing, because a lot of our clients, they are higher end. And we, basically want you to write custom themes for like each of these places. So on the one hand, I was doing that. And after a while of doing that, I basically said, like, hey, to myself, I said, hey, like, I probably should be getting paid more than what I'm getting paid. But this particular agency that I was doing subcontract work for, they said, no. We really don't want to pay you more. And but I said, this is what I think I should be getting paid, because basically I was doing a flat fee for each site. And they basically said, oh, you'll never get that. What the funny part is like, I do get that now as a minimum, and much more than that, multiples of that actually now, without having to go through anybody else. But at the time, they were basically like, oh, no, you won't get that. They just basically wanted to keep me in that position where I was helping build their wealth, and I understand that. Part of the other part of the reason too is I told you about the IBM consultant that said basically WordPress is a thing where you push a button and things come out. I told you about this agency. Basically, this is their attitude. The local agencies that don't want to pay. This is kind of a chronic problem of the ease of WordPress and the marketplace having so many solutions, whether it's themes or page builders or things like this, basically devalues all the other things that you bring to the table. And that was the thing that I saw in working for all my remote agencies, is they really didn't focus on the thing that was most important to the client, which was getting them traffic, getting them leads, getting them more customers, and ultimately more revenue. Now, the other thing that I found when I was doing freelance and ranking here in Sacramento is a lot of the times when people were looking for a WordPress developer specifically, what they were looking for is someone to come in and rescue a job that they had hired somebody to do. So a lot of times people were hiring outfits based on the price. There's no other way to really say this. They were basically hiring places that they felt they could get the lowest price for, basically close the same as other agencies. So, you can kind of do the math on that. But a lot of times I would get called to do this, and it's like, oh, there's there's just stuff we don't like about this or whatever. And they'd complain about their current web agency. But basically they were trying to use me as leverage against them. But I would often give them a quote, and then they would say, oh, that's too much. I blew all my budget on, hiring this other place. And ultimately they would pretty much every single time, I think, go back to the original and just get it done, or just, power through it. They were also expecting me as a local WordPress developer here in Northern California to be the same price as everywhere else. And again, that was another reason why I was like, there's some kind of math here where when people, say they're a WordPress expert or a WordPress guru, or they build WordPress websites, this is kind of what people expect. And this is, a lot of reason why I stopped focusing on that ultimately. Ultimately, around 2017, I started pivoting to SEO. Now, do I still do WordPress development? Yes, I still build sites on WordPress. I still do development. I still have clients where I actively do development for them, but I really don't focus on that all that much on my website anymore. And the result is the past few years this is actually where I wanted to be when I first got into web development after leaving the bakery career behind. I'm now where I wanted to be, pretty much. And that is all a result of gaining experience in WordPress enough, but then ultimately not focusing on it in my messaging because it attracted the wrong people. And that was a reason too, like why I stopped going to the meetups, the local meetups, because I hate to say it, but there's other reasons too, but ultimately it was attracting the wrong people too. There's people that had, they had their nonprofit website that they had built and they needed someone to help them, or they, needed someone to figure out the specific theme that they had done. I got little jobs out of it that got me experience when I was first starting, but there came a point where it became really obvious that it's like, I'm not going to level up by doing this or trying to get these leads anymore. So my message really about this, even with the agencies that are deeply involved in the WordPress space, and I don't know about the very, very elite, but I've heard stories. I've heard people tell me what they earn at different times from different places. And it's very interesting to me. I think there's even some devaluation within the WordPress community of what we do. And a lot of time you'll see people in the community being like, oh, we're like, 45% of the web, or whatever the number is nowadays. Oh, we're 42% of the web, or we're 46% of the web. I know for a fact that all the people in the WordPress community do not earn 46% of the money that's out there in web development. And I think a lot of it is caused by focusing on tools and focusing on technology instead of focusing on what we actually do for clients. At the end of the day, clients want an outcome. They either want more leads, they want more revenue, they want a simplified system, they want to save time behind the scenes, they want a better organized process behind the scenes. And the sites that we build, the web applications that we build for them help power that. And if we don't focus on that as our messaging, what problems we solve for people that we happen to use websites for, and yes, we're very adept at building websites and we can do all that. When we focus on saying, we're an expert in WordPress, and we may well be, or, we have a WordPress podcast, or we have a WordPress blog, or whatever it is, I think it tends to attract a lot of people who see WordPress as a cheap solution to a problem instead of an efficient problem to a expensive problem. I'll just focus on the last little bit here. I know that in certain sectors, so in high-end e-commerce, some people use Magento. Not an easy platform, not simple. I'm very sure that people who develop in Magento are getting paid. It's not a huge share of the content management system market, but still. I know in higher education, like universities and higher colleges, like thinking like Ivy League and stuff like that, I know a lot of them build on Drupal. I know that Drupal developers don't have a problem getting paid. I have a lot of people that when I bring up, things like page builders, like, people who focus on page builders as like, yeah, I use this because it saves me time. It saves you time. Great. I think you should be focusing on attracting a different type of client, because spending more time is not as big of a deal if you're solving different problems. Now, I think at a certain level, like if the sites are all within a certain range of complexity and you're just building a marketing site, basically, page builders are fine. I think that's great. I know there's a few big sites that use page builders, but I look at enterprise level sites and I don't see a lot of that. I don't see, on enterprise level sites, it is more different types of development. It's not using Elementor or even things like Wix or Squarespace. Those are different solutions for a different level. So my challenge to you, if you are doing WordPress development, is really think about what problems that you want to solve and how can you express that toward people without focusing on WordPress. Because I think within the WordPress community, and it's probably like this in all the web development communities as far as I know, but especially in WordPress, because that's one that I'm really familiar with, there is a lot of rah-rah, like, hey, we're this big thing. We're part of this community that is so big and part of the web. Think about what is best for you personally and what your goals are personally, because I think it's cool to be part of a community and all that. But at the end of the day, you have goals, your family has goals. You got to think about what you want to do and how you position yourself. And the messaging that you put out there is really going to make a difference in the people that are attracted to you, because words have meanings beyond just the words. Words have connotations that over time they develop these different meanings. And I hate to say it, but I think when we lead with saying like, oh, we build WordPress websites, I think that's the wrong messaging if your goal is to build a stable financial future. And that is just my 2 cents. Like I said, I have been doing this full time since around this time of year in 2012, so that's like 9 years. I have a lot of battle scars from this, and I'm just, trying to help people out. You might disagree, that's fine. I know that what I'm doing is working good for me, and it might not work good for somebody else. And if what you're doing works for you, great. Don't let me interfere with it. But if you feel like you need to change something up in what you're doing, don't be afraid to do it, because it might be just what you need to do, is just changing it up and trying something different. All right. My name is John Locke. Normally I talk about SEO. I just wanted to talk about this, and normally I'm talking more toward clients, but this one is more an internal conversation that I wanted to have with other web developers out there. If you got value out of this, like I said, be sure to hit the subscribe button. I'm putting out videos about once a week. Give this a thumb up. It'll help YouTube surface my other 800 and something videos. There's a lot here. If you have a question, if you have a comment, if you want to tell me I'm full of it, go ahead and leave it in the comments below. That's cool. That's all I have for now. Until next time, peace.